Hey guys, Boy here, and this is how JerAx plays Rubick. Before I start this video, I actually mentioned giving an arcana to people that actually followed me on social media, and I decided how I want to give the arcana away. So this is what's going to happen. I'm probably going to change my series. I think there are not that many heroes I want to make videos about fighting anymore. So what I want you guys to do is tweet to me a new idea for a new series, and I'm going to give the arcana to the most interesting or more creative idea, and that at the same time I feel like I can actually execute. I'm going to give you guys 7 days to actually think about it, and we can send as many ideas as you want. Another cool thing to pay attention to is how he follows the fight through a different path. These are one of the best times to ward, because even if the enemy team has vision of that area, it's way less likely that they will note you warding, and at the same time you secure advantage over fighting in that area. They isolate Undyne and OD. While OD runs away, check out that ward gave them a huge advantage on the next engagement. Actually, he plants another ward just to be sure. And this is actually a pretty interesting approach. Usually when a fight like that happens and the enemy team is fighting very aggressively in a very close to your base part of the map, you will usually suspect that there's a ward there. So if they plant 2 observe wards in pretty close areas, if you just find one of them, you will usually get satisfied and think, okay, I de-warded. But if you have 2 wards in that area, it's way less likely that you will actually spend another sentry looking for more wards. So it's a cool thing he's doing here. The fight keeps happening. He Astros OD, and check how he approaches the rest of the fight. When Magnus drags OD back, Shadow Demon disrupts him, and since he has Lift ready, but heroes like Nyx already respawned, check how he walks back. He still has range to cast Lift, but now if Nyx really wants to kill him, he will be isolated from the fight, and Nyx won't be able to land a clutch stun, for instance. And indeed, his instincts were right. In the end, Nyx only hits Jakiro with stun and his team disengages. This is an amazing showing of JerAx's decision making. They are just chilling close to their tower, and thanks to that observer ward they are comfortable fighting. He right clicks Sand King without ever letting himself take any damage. Pretty good, and he plays this the best he can, just attack moving. ST is able to disrupt Sand King eventually, and checked JerAx's decision making. He doesn't need to lift Sand King, he's dead and the level of Burrow Strike doesn't allow him to disengage properly. He lifts Omni, but places him in a very unfavorable position.
What is this? I don't care to be tested.
Also, after all of that, instead of walking back to base, since he's level 3 with no boots, it's definitely faster to suicide to Roshan. He gets money for boots and Windlace at 4 minutes, which is huge, while also losing almost no time. He even kind of gives up on suiciding since it's close to the rune spawn, but then he just gets the bounty rune, buys another TP and then suicides. A lot of good decisions in this game. Not only JerAx knows that if he clumps up with OD going for that kill, they are both going to be stunned by Sand King, he also predicts that Omni Knight is going to be behind all of that. So he lifts Omni when the Astro is about to end, and even with Repel they right click the Sandman to death. This is one hell of a crazy fight. Since Dire had vision of Beastmaster and Rubick top, they commit super hard on Invoker. The first good decision from JerAx happens right away. He doesn't have a lot of allies there, so he doesn't TP right in front of the mess. He lands a good Fade Bolt and also a good Burrow Strike to lure everyone towards his tower. Note that he doesn't commit Lift right away. If Dire gives up, he has the range to use it, and as long as they chase him, the better. When they give up, he can grab a good target and his team will follow up. He probably didn't want to repel, but now Sand King has to give up. OD Astros him, and of course, he doesn't line up in front of the Astro only to take damage from Purification later. He goes after Omni, and by lifting him as soon as Astro is about to end, they secure the kill on Sand King and almost kill Omni. Check how this lift completely puts him in a bad spot. Unfortunately though, Omni plays his hand pretty well and survives with close to no HP. Just a quick pick off. I would have liked to see him using Repel before going in, but as you can see he barely had the range to lift Sand King, so he was probably afraid of losing time. This is a reasonably long fight. He TPs in to help Beastmaster, and the first thing to note is how he makes sure to not stack stuns. He waits the duration of Roar to cast Burrow Strike, then he lifts. He also steals another stun, but only after casting the skill he had before, and when Sand King shows up they get Cold Feet. But since his team shows up they get 2 kills. I would seriously tilt if I was playing with this OD. JerAx plants a sentry to get Sand King when the wave pushes. He still has the Elk Stand. Since OD goes to the lane, Sand King is not comfortable being around. Even then, JerAx is able to stun him, but OD didn't follow up as fast as he could. And when he gets there, he banishes the target that just got stunned, when Rubick already had Burrow Strike. Then he retreats, even though JerAx still has Burrow Strike. When OD decides to go in, it's too late, and he even throws Sanity's Eclipse later, with no success. Not a few seconds later, he goes in mid, and check how he uses the trees to only get noticed by the enemy team when he's pretty close to the fight. They get a kill because he makes sure to steal Purification. See how much time he waited? Again we see him using that regen to disengage, and he stays close to the fight, even though he has no mana. It gives him enough 1 charges to get mana for Purification. This was also a pretty nice arcane drop, by the way. Also note how he goes back to the sentry to make sure he was not getting hunted down by Slark. Also, since Dire loses an Observer Ward in that place, when he goes in again, Slark doesn't expect to die to Purification before Omni was able to help him. I feel like JerAx misplayed here. His team is sieging and he gets there a little bit late. He has Aetherlance but goes kinda close to place a sentry ward. But even then, when he goes for the heal, I feel like he is way closer than he would need to be. He gets caught in the Elk Stun and dies. I really like his play here. He finds Slark in the jungle, and usually stunning Slark while he's using Dark Pact is bad, but with Burrow Strike it's fine. Also, check how he goes into this fight. He uses all the fog from the small camp and at the same time plants a lot of sentries and wards to make this fight more easier for his team. He also lands a pretty well timed Astral into Burrow Strike, securing the Slark before he's even able to use Shadow Dance, while also getting Sand King later with Shadow Demon. So JerAx was just chilling in the safe lane when Nyx and Undying just explode Morphling. You can argue that Rubick is on fault for not using any skills, but to be honest, I definitely feel like Morphling got caught by surprise here. The decay into Soul Rip build is pretty explosive, and he should have probably morphed strength a little bit after the decay. Anyways, check how he gets the kill. Undying players will play very aggressively in the early game, so there's always a chance to make them overextend. But the thing is, Undying is too hard to kill. Nyx is more possible though, so check how 1. He doesn't use any of his skills until the hero is there, and he has range to throw Nyx into the tower. Rubick doesn't have a lot of burst, so they need everything for this kill. Also, since he doesn't throw Fate Bolt while Nyx was lifted, he doesn't throw it right away anyways, not only because of spiked carapace, but he also gets to hit Undying with it. And in the end, even though they went on Nyx, Undying tanked most of the damage and they get him. Undying is indeed a hard hero to go in fights. But in this game, not only this is a support Undying, but Nyx is also level 6 and they don't have sentries. So there's really no point in trying to go on Nyx without knowing if he has ult on cooldown or not. And you might be thinking, oh my god, this is so simple, but time and time again, people don't really think about it when they go for ganks. A good part of playing Rubick is stealing spells. As he approaches that fight, Undyne shows up, and I really feel like stealing his ult is better than Tomb. Not only that Tomb is low level, but against Ursa, they would easily be able to kill it. I definitely feel like that was the best skill to be stolen in that team fight since Nyx was on Fog. And after the RP, he also waits the duration of the stun to wear off before lifting. But I feel like he misplayed here. His only contribution left was Fate Bolt, which he was waiting for Enrage to end before casting. So he didn't need to stay so close to Ursa to throw a Fate Bolt that has a pretty big range. With OD in the fight, Astro is definitely a good skill to have. Not only it's ridiculously easy to steal, but it's very good against Ursa, since he can always ban him when he ults. See how he doesn't randomly steal anything? A fight is definitely about to happen, and at level 1, the cooldown on spell steal is too long to use it recklessly. Check how he plays very far back, steals Astral, and saves Underlord. You can make different arguments for this fight. You can say JerAx misplayed because he could have banished Undyne way before, focus the Tombstone, and get an overall better trade. He felt like saving Underlord, which he succeeded in doing, but anyways, it was a good trade for his team regardless. I talked about this type of play in my Lion video, and even though it's not exactly what happens here, I feel like pointing it out again, because it's something very simple that can change your way of thinking into the game. Rubick doesn't have cooldown of TP, so he's walking towards a lane, instead of TPing right after respawning. And that makes a lot of difference. If he instantly went to another lane, he wouldn't be able to save Magnus here. This is a very interesting clip. Magnus gets baited pretty hard, but luckily for him, his allies were close. Check how he doesn't steal anything right away. The only thing he really wants from these two heroes is Disruption and maybe Shadow Demon ult. Shadow Demon waited as long as possible to cast Disruption, and JerAx steals it right away, and they also kill Ursa. Usually you don't want to throw nukes at Ursa during Enrage since he will take almost no damage, but since Fate Bolt reduces the damage output from Ursa, it's okay to use it, even though it doesn't make a lot of difference. This is a very tricky fight. JerAx wants to engage during nighttime and he even places a sentry in the mid lane. But if you check this clip just a little bit before, there is an observe ward in the mid lane high ground, probably just outside of range from that sentry. Anyways, his play is pretty good. This play would be pretty risky if he didn't have vision there, so he places an observer ward on a common spot that people will use to engage, and they also had another observer ward showing where people were TPing to. And he just stands there, outside of vision, at least JerAx thinks so. But he was wrong. You can see Undyne going right on him. That stolen disruption ends up being useful. He was just unlucky with his dewarding. Disruption and Astral are two good spells to steal, but in these crowded fights, Impale is ridiculously strong, especially when you have instant cast animation with it. He thinks about stunning OD, but since his team can deal with him, he uses it on Undyne and they secure 2 kills. This is just a classic Rubick play. They smoke, find OD, he uses lift, his previously stolen skill, steals another one right away, securing the kill. The fight evolves and that stolen skill has huge impact now, because they can get rid of Undyne before Shadow Demon is able to save him. Actually, no, lol. They get cold feet and disengage with Underlord ult. I mean, it is hard to play as 5 against Undyne, and on top of that, the Tombstone is in a very hard place to find. But I really feel like a sentry ward on the cliff would be enough to deal with it, but after Underlord ults, there's nothing you can do. They suspect Ursa is Roshin and smoke gank. They have vision of OD farming mid, so he feels confident going up the stairs. The smoke breaks and he goes in pretty aggressively. One important thing to note here is how he doesn't panic and uses Astral. In teamfights with 2 or 3 heroes, the skill is pretty good because it allows you to isolate and focus someone. But if you do that against solo heroes, you set up all your team around the Astro, allowing not only the enemy team to hit skills on multiple heroes at the same time, but you also buy unnecessary time for the enemy team to regroup. Anyways, see how the enemies shows up one at a time, so no reason to use Astro. An aspect of supporting that a lot of people forget is warding as you go and as you seek objectives. For instance, if you as a Radiant support ward the Roshan Cliff after Roshan dies and all of the bot towers are down, you are kinda losing the benefits of it. For all you know, Roshan is going to respawn after the ward expires, and also it's less likely that a fight happens there. In this clip, check how he tries to take away vision from the cliff close to where they are fighting, while he also plants an unexpected ward, since he knows a fight is going to happen there. Planting a suboptimal ward is not that bad because it allows his whole team to fight with an advantage. This effect gets amplified since it's nighttime. Since OD casted Astral, Magnus tries to go in but gets juked. And check how that ward allows them to position themselves favorably, avoiding the Ursa initiation. Even though he had vision of Ursa, he gets caught with his pants down. First hit bash. But he plays it pretty cool. He lifts Ursa, uses wand, hides himself in that juke, so if Ursa really wants to commit, he is definitely dead. He also steals Vendetta, allowing him to re-engage. Even though Nyx had a sentry around that area, the extra move speed allows him to reach Nyx and lift and stun him with a stolen impale. This is a pretty crazy clip. Radiant is dominating the secret shop area, but pay attention to how JerAx positions himself. He's always around the sentry ward area, to be sure he's safe. When the creep wave passes by the sentry, giving vision, he is able to hide himself in that juke spot that allows him to jump with blink if a fight starts, while also hiding him pretty well. A fight starts and he can easily engage, stunning the Ice Path heroes. The main problem is that he wanted to steal Astral, but gets engaged by the Ursa. Unfortunately, with Hurricane Pike he dies. He wanted to hide himself in the fog to not allow OD attacking him, but the zombies giving vision fuck with him. This is one of the final fights from this game. They get a pick off on Ursa, but at the same time they commit a lot of stuff for it. They go high ground, and I didn't even knew this was possible, but you can still burrow. Even though you don't get extra range on your skills, you take way less damage and you also are invisible. And well, they just eventually win the game. A lot of times people underestimate how cast times are important. In this clip he wraps around at nighttime to go on Omni Knight, and pay attention to how he grabs this skill. After the Omni nerf on the repel duration, he doesn't want to pop it as soon as he sees Rubick, because they can just keep chasing the Omni and eventually kill him. What Omni is waiting for is Jugger to get close and start using Blade Fury, and as soon as that's the case, he raises his hand to cast the spell, and JerAx interrupts it right away. Not only they put him out of position, but now he has to cast the animation twice, allowing them to get the kill. Jugger also blocks him pretty well. Another similar clip. This time the support Morphling shows up and gets Omni completely unprepared. He times his stuns pretty well and they kill Omni. But that's not the biggest thing to take away from this fight. Lion gets there late, and using a key spell like Earth Spike when an ally already died against mobile heroes like Morphling can be deadly. Check how Morphling has no fear that he can dive Lion. That spell usage almost killed him, and only because he gets a pretty good double Earth Spike later he runs away. If he died there is a big chance he would see something like "oh my god, no TP reaction," when in reality what almost killed Lion there was his own recklessness. Omni had used heal beforehand and Jugger was spinning there, it was impossible to save him. This footage is about the little things. They go on OD, and since it's nighttime, he doesn't really need to place the sentry from behind the trees, because if there's a ward there, they would get spotted dewarding it anyway. Also, watch this in slow motion. Check how he doesn't instantly lift OD even though he had vision of him. Only when he decides to turn, he uses it. If, for instance, he used the skill as soon as he spotted OD, he would be closer to his tower, and maybe he reached a fog during all of that and survived in the end. One thing that I would have liked to see is them waiting for OD to use Astral before going, but since nighttime was almost over, I understand them going in regardless. The fight doesn't end here though. He goes in to kill Nyx, and while it may seem like a minor thing, see how he goes in the trees instead of running close to the tower? He can easily get out of vision, and at the same time he scouts for TPs. Another fog related clip. Rubick was hiding in the fog and at the same time very close to level 5. I'm pretty sure he asked Jugger to hit the ranged creep before going. Anyways, he's able to get Omni when he was healing the creep, but Jugger gets unlucky with the bounces. He steals Repel and does something a little bit unusual, and that in the heat of the moment I don't see myself thinking about it. The natural target to cast Fate Bolt would be Nyx, right? But if he casted on Nyx, it wouldn't bounce to all of the 3 heroes, so he goes for a Lion instead, and yeah, it might seem minor, but I feel like pointing it out. And maybe if Omni didn't took that damage, he would have heal ready when they jump on Nyx. Now that Purification is on cooldown, they have a 9 seconds timing window to go in and they explode the little bug. I will talk a lot about warding the map as you go and as you need to take objectives. In one of the last fights he went to that cliff to ward, and now that it's nighttime they go in pretty deep, even though Radiant still has their tier 1 up. So they feel pretty safe around that area, but they are not. As they spot Nyx, since he has Surge, check out he goes way past that place to use the sentry, allowing no counterplay to Nyx. This is a pretty wonky clip. Even though Omni casts Repel, Darkseer had already vacuumed him and they secure the kill. They get another good fight in that area, especially because of that ward. As he goes in, he tries to time the stun with Lift, but doesn't quite get it. Morphling also misplays because he's stunned right on top of Nyx's stun. Pay attention to his movements. He wants to steal another spell, but he doesn't want to click someone randomly and see what he grabs. Lion used Hex, and he doesn't care about it. But when he uses the stun, instant grab. It didn't make a difference here, but a few seconds later he TPs in to help top, and check how he plays it. He lifts into Earth Spike, steals Impale, lands a double stun, and they get a double kill. Having 2 extra spells in one fight, in comparison to just one, can make a huge difference. And reliably being able to pull this off is one of the things that separate average Rubiks from good ones, especially in games where there isn't really an amazing spell to steal, but several okay spells available. To be honest, Impale and Earthspike are pretty good spells, but they are not like Ravage and Black Hole and all of that jazz. After that, Juggernaut goes Rampage. He runs in, and check how Rubick plays this fight. If he gets too far back from the fight, he will take tower hits. The location he goes in combines Precious Fog around him, he lands a beautiful lift into double Impale, and again we see him waiting for someone to cast the spell he wants. He never randomly steals a spell just because he needs another one, and they secure an extra kill.